lascio la parola ad Adam che ci fa un po' l'inquadramento del mercato e poi vi raccontiamo un po' di novità. Adam, it's up to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you for inviting Context to speak tonight. It's a great pleasure to be here with Isabel, who's the country manager for Context. So it's been a sad time, I know, in Italy, because you missed out on a big competition which has just taken place. But the good news is that all of us have 1,629 days to wait until the next World Cup. So that's the good news, and hopefully we'll all be in it. Any case, it's been an exciting time. So today I'm going to talk to you, I need this, about our Channel Watch survey. And I would say that Italy is probably the model country in Europe for the way that this survey is treated. Because what you do in Italy so well is you want the reseller's voice to be heard. And so we have 1,610 resellers from across Italy who have responded to this survey, which is the most of any big European country, and is a great tribute to the distributors, our partners, for the work which they put into this survey in terms of getting resellers to let their voice be expressed. So really, the first thing I would say is that today we're going to hear the voice of the resellers. So this is not, let's say, what we think, this is what the resellers are telling us. And we track this every year. We look at how the market is actually going and developing. And just before I do that, I just have to share with you a little bit of happiness, which is the context this year. We're celebrating 35 years. And so that's quite a long time. If you look and see the age of the resellers, you'll see there's very few resellers who are above 30 years. And we had a recent conference with the company, and we called it How We Plan for the Next 35 Years. So I hope that we'll still be here in the next 35 years. And we are pan-European, and we are the standard for reporting of B2B data. And we have very, very high percentage coverage in our European markets, something like 90% in the major categories of the data. And we're always looking for those extra panelists just to make it complete. So in terms of today's presentation, just to tell you where the data comes from, the data comes from three main sources. It comes from the Channel Watch survey, and this tells you what people think. It comes from our reseller metrics, which tells you how many resellers are doing any particular activity. And it also comes from our sales tracking data, which tells us how much it's worth. So those three things is where we get our data from. In terms of the landscape of the resellers who respond, this is for 6 countries: UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and Poland. So in the presentation, I'll be showing the Italian results compared to these 5 countries, obviously major European economies. And the profile is very similar. Most of the clients are small business, 65%. Most of the companies are between up to 10 years old or between 10 and 30 years old. You can see that. And most of the companies who've responded are small companies. About 2/3 of them are small companies. Most of the respondents are CEOs, senior managers, the people who respond to our survey. So what is the landscape looking like in Europe? So we're going to start off with an overview of what the reseller landscape is looking like. And what you can see is that the total number of resellers in these 6 countries has stayed very stable year on year. This is comparing Q1, so the first quarter of 2017, to the first quarter of 2018. You can see that in Italy there's a small decline in the number of resellers. So it's gone from 24,000 in Q1 2018 down to 23,500. And what this measure is we have the reseller names, so we know how many resellers are actually selling. This is based on what the distributor has actually invoiced to resellers, the number of different resellers. Okay, so this is like a factual piece of information. What you can see is that the average sales per reseller is low in Italy. It's around about 60,000 per reseller. And what that means is that it's not such a consolidated market. The most consolidated market in terms of resellers is the UK. You can see much fewer resellers and a much higher average in terms of the purchases that they make from the distributors. So that's the overall landscape. Then we look at PCs, which round about 60% of all of the resellers in Italy sell, in fact, PCs. And you can see there a similar type of pattern, which is that the more resellers than in any other country in Italy, and gone down slightly between 2017 and 2018, and the average sales has stayed very, very similar. It's exactly the same year on year. Okay? So what happens when the number of resellers diminishes is that there's consolidations, mergers, companies that go out of business decide not to continue acting in this market. Now, of course, the big question is, because we call this resellers in an age of digital transformation, where do the resellers see future growth coming from? And some of these results are quite surprising. So you look here, the light blue is Italian, and the dark blue is all the 6 countries. And what you see there is that security software is the top choice in Italy, followed by 3D printers, which is amazing. And 3D printers was the top one in the whole of Europe as well. Then we have surveillance, which is very closely linked to security. So this is what the resellers are saying. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 areas and we're going to see what they're actually doing. Okay, so we're going to compare what they say to what they do. So let's have a look at 3D printers. And what you see in Italy, which is quite interesting, is that the number of resellers selling 3D printers has gone up very considerably. In Italy, it's gone up in Germany and Spain and France. We're still talking small numbers, but this is actually happening. It's beginning to happen. The average sales per reseller is gone right up. And what's happening, and this is always very interesting for distributors and for resellers, guess which part of their business has started to really grow? It's the consumables. Now that's a nice business to be in because it's very profitable. And this year the consumables revenues went up quite considerably. So this is one to watch out for. It is still tiny compared to PCs. It's still tiny compared to the traditional markets. But what we're looking at is where could growth come from. Smart home, my goodness. Virtually nothing happening outside of UK and Germany. Now it's interesting that the smart speakers were launched in the UK and Germany first. So what our advice is to really watch how this market changes when the smart speakers come in. When we look at how the world has changed, we see that that has been a determining factor. Google Home, Amazon Echo have really changed this market. The consumers really like it, and it's within their budget. Now here's a really interesting one, which is for anyone who's in enterprise, and it's the hyper-converge activity. And what you see there is Italy has a very interesting trend. So what we can see is that this is a big growth market. It's also a lot of money in countries, particularly where there are lots of data centers. And the UK is really the most powerful one there. And the resellers are purchasing 281,000 euros of product every quarter in this activity. What you see in Italy is quite interesting. There was a lot of people who went into it in Q1 2017, and then it looks like they were not making enough money or something stalled them, so fewer actually selling a year later. And in fact, the average sales per reseller went down in Italy. So here's an interesting one. We know it's a big opportunity market, but the data is showing that it's not quite there yet in Italy. And the same is true in Poland as well. Now, we always ask the resellers how optimistic they are. And you know what? They have a very, very good feel for the market. And so their voice is interesting. And you're going to see that in what we've done here. Because what we've done is we've compared how optimistic they were a year ago with how much they think they did well looking back on this year. Okay? So this is here. The dark blue is when they looked forward to 2017 a year ago. And the light blue is when they look back on 12 months previously. Okay? So what you can see is that Spain started off the year super, super optimistic, and they had the best results of all of Europe last year. They had a growth of 8% between 2017 and 2018. What you can see is the United Kingdom started off with a very pessimistic feel, and guess what? The market went down by -4% in the UK. In Italy, the feeling was not very positive at the beginning of the year compared to other countries, and guess what? The feeling looking back on the year was that wasn't a very good year. 0% growth in Italy in 2018. Now, the good news is here, on this slide here. This is how Italian resellers see the next 12 months. And what you can see is that there is a real optimism which is starting in the Italian market. You can see it's the second most positive country, and you can see that it's a lot more positive than it was last year. So that's very good. And I was talking to Isabel beforehand, and she said 9% growth so far in the year. What a fantastic growth so far for distribution. So this is very encouraging start to 2018. The next question which we ask every year is, what are resellers actually looking for from their distributors? Each reseller is different and in different stage of development. Many of them are very, very small. What is it that they're actually looking for from their distributors? It's quite an interesting thing that's happened this year. It's happened across Europe, and it's happened in Italy. So this is across Europe, and Italy follows the same pattern, which is that customer service and customer portal have shot up in importance. And I would almost call this year the year of the customer portal. It's a very concrete way in which you can help your resellers. And you can see how much more important it has become to resellers that you have an effective and efficient customer portal and that you're giving customer service. That blue line, the dark blue line, means that it's moved up 4 places, customer service, from last year. So it was number 5 last year. Customer portal has moved up 5 places, so it was number 7 last year. So you can see there is a change there, and I think it's an important one to note in terms of what the resellers are expecting. We then ask, what are you missing from the reseller? We haven't asked this question before. And so here we see the first column there is all countries. Sorry. The first column there is all countries, and the second column is Italy. And this is ranked in order of all countries. So what is missing? Guess what? Well, I called them the hygiene factors, the 3 hygiene factors. Pricing, product availability, and delivery costs. You know, no one's going to thank you for giving a great price, but guess what? They expect to have it. And so it's the first thing which they say, we want more, we want better prices, we want more availability, we want lower delivery costs, okay? So you can see that. The interesting thing is that slightly less concern in Italy about the delivery costs than in other countries. Then we move into the value add part of the business. And you can see that, in fact, even there's a greater demand for technical support, product portfolio, and the B2B customer portal, which is what is showing in Italy. Okay, so you can see those are demands. Now, the interesting thing is this, and there's always two sides to this debate. The distributor wants to give the value-added service and invests in it. Does the reseller want to pay for it? Okay? Because there are many different ways of going to market, and our belief is that it's important to have these value-added services in order to differentiate yourself, but we're in a very competitive market, and there's always the low-cost argument as well. But we think that the long-term winners are those that are really offering these areas of support and training and value add. Here's an interesting one, because what you see is that we ask resellers, what type of training would you like from a distributor? And there's a bit of a communication and maybe a value question here, because the most important category is none. And so there's a little bit of a communication challenge there to say, you know what, we have, let's say, training that we can offer you. It's very strong in Germany and France. The none is very strong, 40% in Germany and France. Italy comes really third at 30%. And then the countries that are the most interested in training from their distributors are the UK, Poland and Spain. And then you can see these are the areas which they look for in terms of help. The UK, you can see strong in all of these areas asking for help. And Italy, the strongest one is in sales techniques. Sales techniques. Now, we look at it from a slightly different perspective now, from the vendor perspective. And we ask our resellers what vendor criteria are important. And so for them, in terms of vendors, the dark blue line is what would make them adopt a product, and the light blue line is what would make them drop a product. Okay? So again, don't be surprised by the fact that product quality, price and margin, and product availability are the most important factors for a reseller to adopt a product. There's no surprise in that. The interesting thing is that if you look at the differential between support and training, product range and marketing program, if you look at that, you can see that it's a more motivating factor for a reseller to adopt a brand. So it's important, if a vendor wants to be adopted by a reseller, to have a good marketing program, to have good support and training, to have a good product range. And guess what? If they don't, it's not going to be the main reason why they get dropped. So it's quite an interesting way of looking at the business. We asked which marketing program has most impacted your business. We collated all the results, and Epson comes out as the star as far as their marketing program is concerned, from the perspective of the 1,600 resellers. And Lenovo is in second place with HP, Oki, Kaspersky, Sophos. These marketing programs are the ones which are most highly rated by the resellers. And when we say to them what is missing from the reseller, from the program, the marketing program, the biggest one is the focus on the market needs. And my favorite comment, because we ask people to give comments in this survey, my favorite comment is down the bottom. The fact that the person who creates them, makes them up, does not own a small company and has no idea what such a company requires and needs. So there's a kind of gap between big company and small company, which is difficult in the marketing programs. So one of the big questions of this digital transformation world is, we know that certain activities are becoming less profitable and that resellers are having to look at new areas, and the most important one, of course, is the cloud. So we asked them how they are progressing towards the cloud. And what we see is that something positive has happened here in Italy. In Italy, there are only 2 countries where the number of resellers has gone up in terms of those that have sold cloud products in the last 6 months. So Italy and France are the only 2 countries that have actually gone up. UK has gone down. And what that means is that we're still talking on average of around about 50% of the resellers who are selling cloud services. So again, we ask, what's putting you off from actually selling cloud services? And the main reasons are data security. This is in order across Europe. Data security, legal restrictions, very important in Germany. You can see it scores very highly in Germany, which has the most restrictive data legislation. And for Italians, you can see the most important is that the demand doesn't justify the investment. They're still not seeing it. You know, some of these products are great, like software as a service, but where's the margin in it for the reseller? The answer is there's not much. It is being commoditized. So the real kind of successful people are the ones who realize that it's the end solution that they're delivering to their customer in which cloud forms a part, which is really where you want to be if you're going to be successful. But selling a software as a service, you're not going to make that much money. We asked this question, and this has probably generated the most interest, because I don't think anyone's asked this question before. We asked the resellers, where do you go in order to find out about what's going on in the market and in order to get your skills, let's say, up to date? And what you can see is that vendor events are the number 1. This is across Europe. I'll show you Italy in a minute. Vendor events are number 1, followed by distributor events, number 2. We have an outlier, which is in France. So 24% of all the respondents, which is in fact 65% of the respondents in France, go to an event called IT Partners. It's a massive event. They take about 12 or 13,000 resellers at Disneyland every year, and they come for a massive get-together with the vendors. Then CeBIT is the most important of the European events. That's where most resellers go to. And then the others are a bit more exotic. So things like CES, Mobile World Congress, Computex, and IFA. Those are more exotic. Now, if you look at Italy, what you see is that the important thing about Italy is that it's the vendor events which are more popular. The distributor events have the same percentage, 31%, as they did in the other one. But the vendor events are just a little bit more popular for them. And then you see CeBIT and the others, CES, Computex, Mobile World Congress, around about the same. Just to finish off this presentation, to say that what we're presenting today is an extract from our survey, and people who've helped us with the survey, Isabel has been sending out all the information to you as a way of appreciating your support to us. That's the Italian feedback. And what we're going to do by the end of August is we publish the full report. And that one is one which we sell and which has an analysis across all of the 13 countries that we've actually surveyed, and that will be available, as I said, at the end of August. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. And Marco, I don't know if we have time for questions or if you want me just to go straight into the next.
Later we will have also
okay,
time
fine.
for networking, but se abbiamo qualche domanda.
Okay, we'll have time afterwards if there are any questions. So thank you very much. I have now a great pleasure in announcing the winners of the Distributor of the Year Award from the Italian Channel Watch. So as I said at the very beginning, we want to thank with very sincerely and very warmly distributors who've helped us to achieve such a fantastic response rate from the resellers. And so it's my pleasure, and Isabel has the award, to give, to say that the winner of the Broadline Distributor of the Year, as voted by the resellers, is Rivedi. So Isabel will. There you are.
Al quarto titolo consecutivo mi sento un po' la Juventus del Channel Watch, quindi poi detto da un interista un po'. But I take advantage of the presence of Adam to thank Context for this survey and to give my personal, but I think from everybody here, personal Channel Watch award for the best country manager to Isabella Aranda. Un applauso, grazie.
Very much, Marcelo. So now we come on to, we have two awards. So one is for the Broadline, the other is for the Specialist Distributor. And so I have great pleasure in saying that the winner of the Specialist Distributor of the Year 2018, as voted for by the resellers in Italy, is Computer Gross.
Thank you.
Gianluca, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. We can give a picture together.
Okay, let's have a picture.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you all. I'll pass the mic back to Marco. Thank you very much.